Around 600 BC, a Greek poet named Stesichorus wrote a poem telling the story everyone knew. Helen, queen of Sparta, ran off with a Trojan prince, and 1,000 ships sailed after her. Then the poet went blind, and he knew why. In Sparta, Helen wasn't a character. She was worshipped as a goddess, and he had slandered her. So he wrote a retraction. Only a fragment survives today, and it says, "This story's not true. You never boarded the ships. You never came to Troy." His eyesight came back. Which leaves the question, if Helen never went to Troy, who did 10,000 men die for? First, the version of the story you already half know. 3 goddesses asking a shepherd named Paris to pick the most beautiful. Each offers a bribe, power, glory, or the most beautiful woman alive. Paris picks the woman. There's one problem. She's already married to Menelaus, king of Sparta. The bigger problem, every king in Greece once swore an oath to defend that marriage. Paris sails to Sparta as a guest and leaves with the king's wife. The oath blows up. 1,000 ships, 10 years. Hector dies, Achilles, then a wooden horse, and a city burning. That's the story the Greeks told, and almost immediately, Greeks started poking holes in it. 2 centuries after one poet lost his sight, Euripides built an entire play on his heresy. In this version, Hera, still furious about losing that beauty contest, decides Paris will never have its prize. So, she makes a copy. Cloud and air is shaped into a second Helen, a breathing, perfect duplicate. That's what Paris takes home. That's what lives in Troy for 10 years. The real Helen is taken away to Egypt, where she waits out the war, faithful and untouched. The most famous adulteress in history, guilty of nothing. Then the scene the play was built for. The war over, Menelaus shipwrecks in Egypt, phantom in tow, and walks into his actual wife. And the real one tells him something that should have ended the argument on the spot. The name can be in many places at once. The body cannot. The phantom dissolves back into the sky, and a soldier says what the whole audience is thinking. All of that for a cloud? And it wasn't just poets. Herodotus, the father of history, went to Egypt and interviewed priests. Their records said Paris and Helen were blown off course to Egypt, where the king, appalled at a guest stealing his host's wife, confiscated Helen and threw Paris out. Helen spent the war there. Then Herodotus thinks it through like a detective. If Helen had actually been inside Troy, the Trojans would obviously have handed her back. No king would watch his sons die for 10 years over a woman he could simply return. Priam wasn't insane, therefore she can't have been there. Sit with that version of the story. It's the darkest yet. No gods, no magic cloud. Strip away everything supernatural, and Helen still isn't in Troy. The Greeks besieged a city that didn't have her, chasing a phantom manufactured entirely inside their own heads. Which brings us to a word. Picture 3 things. The ghost of a dead man, the friend who visits you in a dream, your own face, and the water. The Greeks had one word for all 3, Eidolon, the word behind idol, something that looks exactly real and has no substance at all. And phantom substitution was already inside Homer's own poem. In the Iliad, Apollo puts the hero Aeneas off the battlefield and leaves an Eidolon in his place. The armies keep fighting over it. Nobody notices. So, ask the obvious question. What did anyone at Troy ever actually have of Helen? Paris fell in love before he'd ever seen her. Aphrodite offered him a name, and the name outbid power and glory. Achilles sailed to his own death for a woman he'd never met. Nobody fought for a woman. Every man carried his own picture of her into battle. Which brings us back to the blind poet and the twist. We have 2 versions. Stesichorus and Euripides say Helen was a phantom. The real one was elsewhere. Homer says no, she actually was there. The Italian writer Roberto Calasso put the difference in one devastating line. In Stesichorus and Euripides, Helen had a phantom. In Homer, Helen is the phantom. In Homer's version is scarier. If the phantom is a trick, this is a story about deception, and deception has a solution. Find the real one, expose the fake. But Homer offers no Egypt, no safe original. His Helen is the image and the woman at once, fused and inseparable. That's not deception. That's a problem with no exit. This is what Colosso meant when he called Helen the power of the phantom itself, the simulacrum. Not a woman with an image problem. She is what images are, walking around in a body. And it's everywhere in the Iliad. The old men of Troy watch her pass and murmur that no one could blame men for dying over that. Then, in the same breath, they say she should be sent away. They respond to her like an apparition, terrible, blameless, like a goddess. Homer shows her at her loom, weaving a tapestry of the battles being fought over her, turning the war into an image while it's still happening. She even talks about the songs that will be sung about all this. She knows she exists for an audience. She's aware of the camera. The recantation poets thought they were rescuing her honor. Real woman here, false image there. Homer refused the split. The woman 10,000 men died for was never available as a woman to anyone, possibly including herself. And the pattern did not stay in the Bronze Age. Every war since then has been fought, at least in part, over an Eidolon, the image of the enemy, the image of the cause, the picture in 10,000 heads that nobody ever checked against the original. Nations still mobilized the way Paris sailed, toward a name. Thousands of years before modern philosophers argued that politics runs on images with no original, the Greeks had already imagined it. A 10-year war for a ghost. And maybe that's why the Stesichorus story ends the way it does. He got his sight back at the exact moment he admitted the story was false. You recover your vision when you admit you've been looking at an image. The story arc, just one more time. A war for a woman, then a war for a phantom, then Homer's version, the oldest and the darkest. A war for a phantom who was also the woman, with no real one hidden anywhere to redeem it. The name can be in many places at once, the body cannot. Helen said that 3,000 years ago. We've built an entire civilization inside that gap. Homer never said Helen wasn't there. He said something worse. He said there was never where she was.